Hi, everybody. Great to see you. I think it was Keith Richard of the Rolling Stones who famously said, "It's great to see anybody." Anyhow, uh, let's get straight to it. You see the title there. Why isn't this working? Maybe it's been sat on there for too long. Okay, I wanted to do a very quick warm up, uh, getting to know you, getting your perspective. After all, this is called Value Voices. So I thought I'd ask four questions. First being, and please put the answers in the chat. First question being, what is the biggest challenge for your organization or your clients? Could you just type away there quickly, diligently, please? Nothing happening. Okay, we've got one. Okay, move on to the next one. Thank you. How does your organization or your client's organization, how does it routinely demonstrate best value programs and projects? Okay, thank you. What are the most important review process steps? Okay, and one last one. What is the typical duration of your critical review steps? Well, I suppose the question, Keith, is what can you do in 1 to 2 days? So we'll move on into the agenda. Um, you might be a little surprised by it. I'm not going to talk about the value methodology itself. I will be talking about a journey and the review points along this journey. Can't see my own slides for chat boxes. So 4 parts: the starting premise, context and need, defining a golden thread, and finding the balance. And then hopefully there'll be time to chat afterwards. By the way, feel free to jump in. I'll keep my chat, whatever it's called, chat box open. Hopefully I'll see it. It's hiding some of my screen, but or just jump in verbally if you want. It's nice if we can have a bit of interaction. So what did Keith say? If the program is following the VM approach, then this is simply a review workshop with all the correct data. Aha, that's it. Okay. So moving on. Doesn't want to move on. I don't know why. Nothing's happening. But I got to say yes to record it. Neither my mouse or keyboard are working. Oh, that's
So
nice.
yeah, if you want to use the arrow, I'm not sure.
I'm trying that.
Well,
Here we go.
yeah, there we go.
Okay, it's working.
Yeah, that's good. Better not pause too long on any particular slide, I suppose. So the starting premise, still not going. I wonder why. Next. Here we go. So we're all familiar with the iceberg, I think, the hidden depths. I won't spend long on this. In fact, I can't seem to get it going. Here we go. Right on the surface, the investors can see the initial costs quite clearly, but underneath, they're likely to crash into the depths of the iceberg, life cycle impacts, potential risks, and the potential opportunity areas. If you dig deep enough, they're there. What I've found over the years is you really have to dig, push hard to find the real opportunities. So another part of the starting premise, I see things rather like a game of snakes and ladders. We go up the ladders and down the snakes, and there's all sorts of them lying around the place. And the conclusion I've come to is a lot more rigor is needed, especially for complex and long duration undertakings. Why? Well, rush projects can lead to serious budget and schedule surprises, delayed service startup, and delays to realization of the planned benefits and the return on investment. Lack of continuity of staff from inception to completion, diluted accountabilities. So many management systems out there, who and what integrates them and how? And in my opinion, we need an overall framework for oversight and probing for best value, effectiveness, and innovation. So whose viewpoint? Well, there's many. There's lots and lots of stakeholders, it's a name, but a few: regulator, the investor, taxpayer, user, third-party stakeholder, owner, operator, consultant, contractor, manufacturer, supplier, etc. And what kind of a review? Well, there's all sorts of reviews taking place. In-house, do-it-yourself reviews, or as consultants, there's done with you type reviews, and there's done for you reviews, but they all have a slightly different flavor, but hopefully a similar process. And then there's the pace and the drivers. Are we looking at strategic planning or resolving urgent problems, or are we looking at assurance of value, best value? Well, context. We're looking here at planning, optimization, and assurance reviews. And as I said, it's a journey, not the value methodology. So why and when would we take the time and the resources, the effort to review? Well, complex undertakings, long duration undertakings, high expenditure, many stakeholder viewpoints, significant or rapid change, uncertainty, ambiguity, and volatility. That's where we get our best results. Just last week, this consultation document came out from the Institution of Civil Engineers. It might say it all. It says, why do major infrastructure projects take so much time and cost so much? I'm struggling a bit with the screen because I've got it covered up with a chat box, partly. I thought a very interesting.
Martin, you don't have to worry about the chat box. I'm keeping an eye on it, so no worries.
Okay, I'll get rid of it. Thank you. That's a great help. Okay.
Thanks.
I thought this quote was really telling. I mean, we hear of all sorts of projects going over budget, behind schedule. We don't hear of those that are so good. But this research project here, out of 3,022, said that only 2% of them finished on time, within budget, and with expected benefits fully realized. So the institutions of civil engineers in the UK, which has about 100,000 members, I think. It reports. It's located very close to the Houses of Parliament, and it's always sending reports off there. And I'm sure the results of this will find its way there. So let's look at the application stages for reviews. Please note that these are notional timelines. Some might seem too long, some might seem too short. So the first stage in my nomenclature is strategic choice, and that could take place 10 years before handover, or maybe 6 years before handover. Next one, definition and planning, could be 8 years before handover, or maybe only 4 years before handover. Then we go into detailed design, -6 years, -3 years ahead of handover. And then in the same delivery period, delivering the project, procurement, installation, construction, whatever, perhaps that starts 4 years or 2 years before handover. And then there's the all important change transition, often forgotten about, more on that later. So where this is all going is transformation, benefits realization, and long-term value being accomplished. And that could go for 75 years. I mean, look at a lot of our infrastructure is over 100 years old. Or maybe the timeline is 45 years, even though, interestingly, we only do our economics on about 30 or 35 years sometimes. That might stand to be corrected there. Any comments so far? Any surprises? Oh, one more missing. One here. I think that's just behind. No, it's not there. It's not. The click's not working again. And then, well into the operational period, perhaps 50 years later, we have the revitalization and repurposing of many major infrastructure projects and other projects. And I've got to say at 50 years or 30 years, but that is a time of angst for some organizations. I'm really struggling with the clicking. And you see, I've got these handshakes here. So we've got the 3 big handshakes as shown there, but along the operational journey, there are these smaller handshakes. And really what this is handover, often an unofficial handover from one set of staff to another, retirements, people moving on, etc. And that can cause quite a bit of disruption. I recall one project in particular where we thought we'd done the consultation with the operational people, who are always too busy to stop and chat about future projects. They don't really think they're going to happen until they see the construction equipment on site. And surprise, surprise, the staff had changed, and we were told that what we were planning to do, this is before my time in VM, and we were told that what we were planning to do wasn't what they wanted. And we said, well, we asked you. No, but you didn't ask us. We're different. So along that route, there can be a lot of missteps or misfortunes. So let's look at managing change for a soft project, where it shows here need, objectives, etc. So need, satisfy increasing demand. Objectives, increase outputs, reduce turnaround time, increase stakeholder confidence. Outputs, implement an integrated interactive system. Outcomes, handover of the system. And no click. You have to read that one for yourself, because I've got to, I have to get rid of this other bit. I've got all the people. There we go. Now everybody's in my way. Boy. Hide meeting. There we go. So the rub with this one was that somebody wasn't happy, and that was the reduced professional resources. In other words, they saw it as staff cutting, or cutting of their responsibilities. Basically, the long-time service providers were most upset about their job changing. And actually the job was changing for the better. It was becoming more managerial, but they didn't see it that way. So the point is, you can do all things right, but unless you do the plan for change transition from the beginning, this is the message, plan and align early for benefits realization. So let's look at a construction project, because we don't want to forget that economics come into it. We need to start early. Options are plentiful at the beginning. We have a lot of leverage and control in the early stages. And this is a simplified cost profile showing the expenditure. Of course, we have this service delivery that can be delayed due to incurring capital risk. And then there can be all sorts of things go wrong along the service delivery line, but just keeping it simple. And this can be used for selecting between different types of project solutions, and for measuring the success of the project as it goes along. And a lot of the time when projects are seemingly over budget, it's over something more internal, such as the estimates not being consistent. Might be missing the contingency, but quite often there's a discrepancy between quoting in constant dollars or current dollars. So defining the golden thread. Start off with the value key. I'll go slowly. So we have portfolio management, where the focus is on benefits planning. We have program management with the focus on the outcomes. Project delivery, focus on outputs. And then the service delivery and asset maintenance, where it's all about benefits realization. And of course, to realize the benefits, we have to maintain whatever it is we're operating and operate it efficiently. Now let's look at the other end. What I see there in some places, but not in others, is oversight and strategic direction with good early direction regarding regulatory compliance requirements, such as changing from coal to gas power station, or to something more sustainable. Investment priorities and returns, resilience and sustainability, values and risk and partnerships. A lot of the good ideas in this area come along later on, when wouldn't it be nice if there was proper direction given in the first place? And then I recall in the chat box something about governance and of course critical approvals. We need to get off on the right foot. So I've been working in what I call value assurance since a long time, since about 2000. And I eventually changed it from value assurance because of the VA bit to value and performance assurance. And that works well because in the early part of this diagram, the focus is on strategic value, risk and definition. And then later, the focus is on delivery efficiencies and performance. The unfortunate part about applying VE is great fun here. But when we're doing it where the mouse is showing here, development, design, etc., what we really usually have to do is to go back to the concepts, whether it be the systems or the overall concept, and get into what should have been done much earlier. So let's have a look at the system. I used to have a value spiral, but I changed it to a value staircase. So a typical review drivers would be changing conditions, ambiguity, uncertainty, delays, cost overruns, and deadlock. And there's 4 parts named simply called select concept, define the change, deliver the change, and optimize the service. So initially, we're reimagining, realigning, and coming up with strategic options. Then in defining the change, where we kind of go with outline design and planning for the implementation. In the deliver change, we're focusing on efficiencies, maximizing those efficiencies, and actually executing the projects. And then a very important but often missing phase, not too long of a phase, but very important, is a transition where the new processes are being embedded, especially important in soft projects. And then for the longer term, the service is delivered and the performance is maintained. And coming out of that, over the many years, we get stakeholder satisfaction and value accomplished by accruing all the benefits along that long route. So looking at the steps, start off with initiation and with a view to engagement right from the beginning, engagement with the stakeholders. So in the first major step or stage, selecting the concept, there's 9 steps, and that takes us through to defining the change, where there's 12 steps, then delivering the change and showing the transition as well, where it goes from green to gray. There's two stages, and then optimizing the service over the long term. So if you see now in yellow, 9 over 53, that's 9 steps and 53 supporting activities and considerations for selecting the concept. When we go to defining the change, there's 12 steps and 63 considerations and activities. Similarly, with delivering the change and the transition, 9 steps, because all the real thinking has been done much earlier, and 15 supporting activities. And I haven't shown any for the next one because typically along that very long service road, we could be going back to the beginning to selecting a concept, a new type of delivery of service, could be defining the change, delivering the change. So up here on the 5, it's a repeat of one or more of the earlier ones. Finding the balance and example application areas. So defining and measuring value. So here we have a simple, if you like, analog type of dial where we have value being measured anywhere from being totally unacceptable because it's failing most of the requirements, right through to the target, which is good, meets all requirements. And then there's a cautionary one where we're over revving the engine, as it were, or we're not using our resources as wisely as we could, where caution, it exceeds some requirements. So where does this come from? Well, it comes a little bit from this, but it comes more from the next slide. So we know that value equals performance divided by resources. But in parallel with that, and this applies all the way along this journey, which could be 50 or more years. But we now want to find the balance and maintain the thread along that long road. So here's an example of a diagnostic tool. And before I show you, I came up with this in 2003, and I've used it extensively since. And it's very, very simple. It's all semi-automated, interactive now. But the principles are simple mathematics and assigning values to certain performance criteria. But I came up with it on a plane, and perhaps it was the Drambuie that I was sipping at the time. And I was flying from Dubai, where I'd worked on the Dubai rail project, and we jointly come up with a formula magique with the French transportation consultants, and this was for selecting where and how to align various stations, etc. And that was quite exciting, coming up with this formula, and they were particularly excited about it. That was an interactive thing, but done on Excel. But I was flying to Calgary, and I was a little nervous because on the day of arrival, or the next day, I was supposed to be, well, I was going to lay an egg on how we were going to adjudicate on the 3 design build projects. It was a public project. How we were going to not put somebody's nose out of joint, as it were, and because obviously only one can get it, and how we were going to demonstrate clarity and transparency. And I was doodling around on the back of a napkin, and that's what I used when I got to Calgary. And it's as simple as this. So there's two axes. One is business aspects, and the other is functionality. And each of these arrows represent a performance profile for either functionality or for business aspects. And in this case, there's 12 in each direction. So the missing thing is showing you the profile, but you can imagine the profile. Each one of these, be it F1, F11, or B1, B12, or whatever, they represent a particular performance aspect, which is relatively unique to each project. I mean, obviously, there's a core set of performance criteria, but there are some that are unique. And to do it well, and we certainly did this well in Calgary, we had a scale for each performance profile, because otherwise you've got to get, well, you get all sorts of interpretations of what is a 5 or what is a -5 or whatever. So you have to give proper guidance to the group. And the answers aggregate and simply go on this chart. So I don't think I've ever seen anything in the very poor. I've seen a lot in the unknown, but when the group tries to put a score on a criteria, it realizes we don't know. Anyhow, this can be used for selecting different projects, different solutions. One might end up here, one might end up here, one might end up there. If you're lucky, one might be on target. Not always, not very often actually. They're usually somewhere around in the marginal area. Or it can be used with a base case. We look at the base case and give it a score. It might be down here. Or it might actually be up here, but it might have down on the profiles that back this up. They may have an awful score on one or two of the particular criteria. So as I said, it's dead simple, but it's really useful to use right from the beginning when we're trying to appraise and select. We're going through definition and planning, when we're going through the detailed design or constructability, or later on when we're looking at the operability of something, or perhaps we're looking at perhaps the task is in this operational area here is to see how resilient is the system, which of course takes you full circle right back to some form of a master plan and appraisal and selection.
Martin, can you just go back to the difference between a business aspect and a functionality?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about a public project, functionality, I'm just trying to understand the difference between achieving a functional requirement versus a business aspect.
You do or you don't?
I don't understand. I just want you to explain.
Oh, okay. I wish I had them in front of me, but actually I do. I have one of my books handy. I've got, I think it's 24 for each. Let me just see if I can find them. But for instance, too much to read. But simply, business aspects would be money, would be one, money and time. So it could be capital cost, lifecycle cost, operating cost. It could be legal. Legal was one I remember on the public project. That was a big deal. Risk. cyclical renewals, those kinds of things. But looking at functionality, the full name of this one actually is quality and functionality, because if it's a building, say, the architects are obviously very keen on the looks. But if it's say it's an oil and gas project, they tend not to care too much about the looks of things. So careful how I use this term. It's normally QF, QF1, QF2, QF3. I just wanted to simplify it. So for functionality, how about impact on existing operations, utilization of site and assets, sustainability, social aspects, aesthetics and ergonomics, operability and maintainability, service level, resiliency, reliability and availability. That's a big one in the oil and gas industry, and power. Does that answer your question? And was that Gary?
It was Steve Holmes. Yes, it
Oh,
does.
Steve.
Thanks.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Gary. Does that answer the question, Steve?
I think so. I get this. So I understand the axes. I can picture them a little bit better now. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to give the principles here rather than getting into the details. But I have found this to be an incredibly useful tool that I've never had anybody query it. That very first time I used it, I went in with fear and trepidation to the workshop, because there was a mix of there was a developer, sorry, a shadow development team. They were very resistant to anything we were doing on the government side of things. There was an architectural company from the US, and they were very resistant to anything we said, especially me. And I was really thinking they'd start throwing things at me or something. And they lapped this up. They loved it. They cooperated 100%. It just makes so much sense when you use it. And I use it all the time on oil and gas type projects offshore. It's anyhow. I think that's my last slide. I'm very close to the end. Oh yeah, this is the last slide. And just to show you the kind of application areas, it's the 360 life cycle from initiation right through to benefits realization. So starting over here is strategic alignment and direction. And this includes many soft projects. And the soft project, of course, can just as easily go into, well, has to go into concept definition. It doesn't have to be this new town type thing here, or it doesn't have to be this offshore rig, but we're going through the stages: concepts definition, project planning, strategic procurement, project development. I think that's actually do by rail. This one here is very tall one in South Korea. Project optimization. Rather late in the day, but on a big project, you can get a lot of bang for the buck, as it were, and speed up the delivery process by looking at the concepts of the systems. And then as we're going through into the I think that's just a token wastewater plant shown there, but optimization, and this would be probably constructability, the actual implementation itself. Never too late. I remember a dam project where there were quite a lot of snickers about doing that value engineering so late. Said I wasn't going to talk about value engineering, but it was at that stage with value engineering. And you can use the value methodology all the way through here. But anyhow, the snickers about the dam project were from the consultant and the contractor saying, we're on site. There's nothing you can do, absolutely nothing. But we'll go along for the ride. And we came up with a small construction saving and a 2-month saving in time. But that 2 month was great because it meant the water could be impounded behind the dam a year earlier. So it gave a year's extra generating capacity. So talk about benefits, a lot of benefits there. And then right through to operational upgrading, repurposing, and starting the cycle off again, maybe 50 years later. The whole point of this is to show that there is a golden thread all the way through here, but it's not always obvious. We'll put it this way, there should be a golden thread, in my humble opinion. So with that, I'd like to call for comments